Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday, July 2nd edition of Birds 365. Dog days of summer are moving right along. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. I know we are in lull period for the NFL. There's not many of them in the year. They have mastered the calendar, but this is the 4 to 6 week period where not much goes on. So Johnny Mac and I are getting through the dog days. We are excited for training camp to roll around, get some new news to talk to you guys about, and report on this team for you guys all season long. Very excited to do it all year. It'll be my first year hosting as through a season. So very excited to do that with you all. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Just real quick before I go into our next topics, Johnny Mac, Rashid Mixon, thanks for the super chat, brother. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for watching today. He said, what was our linebackers ranking last year? Not enough. It was, I don't know exactly what it was. Johnny Mac, to you?
What were the Eagles? I can give you their individual ranking. Is it, if he's talking about PFF, I assume he's talking about. But I'll pull it up. Zach was okay. Nick Morrow was okay. Nick Morrow was kind of he was kind of a strange player. He had some big games. He had some really good games. When he was good, he was really good. When he was bad, he was really bad. That was his deal.
I remember the game he had 3 sacks, Nick Morrow?
Yeah. Zach Cunningham was 37th of 82. Devin, as I mentioned, was 80th. Shaquille Leonard, who was kind of a nothing. Most of that was in Indianapolis. He was 53rd. Oren Burks, as the backup in San Francisco, was 64th. Let me find Nick because he's on Buffalo now. Let's see. He was 36th. So, that's a hell of a lot better than 80th. That's what you're talking about. But because, the name. That's what the big name trap. If Joe Banner was here, he'd call it the big name trap.
You know what's funny to me about Devin White is, and I'm with you on the whole thing, by the way. I mean, you're making too much sense for me to ignore it. By the way, I would like to bring Zach Cunningham back if he's still out there as a depth piece. It wouldn't be a bad option if there's nobody else. But the funny thing to me about Devin White is linebackers don't get drafted 5th overall. Like, they just don't in the league. So he must have been his prospect was so high as a linebacker coming out of LSU. I mean, he went 5th overall. You just don't see that in the NFL, especially in the modern NFL, of a linebacker going that high. I don't have all the instances, obviously, off the top of my head, and he has just fallen off the face of the earth, basically, in the last couple of years. And it's definitely an alarming thing, but I do want to move on.
Well, and the contract tells you, contracts don't tell you everything, but it tells you a lot when you talk
Especially
about
somebody. 5th overall.
Yeah. Again, Todd Bowles, and I looked it up in the break. I got the exact quote. He was a father figure to me, still is to this day, and he checks in on me. That's what he said about Todd Bowles. So he doesn't hate Todd Bowles. And Todd had said he probably needs a change of scenery. So that was the question that was asked. He said, I don't know if I needed a change of scenery, but I feel it was definitely good, a breath of fresh air to be able to start over, work my way from the ground up. There's nothing like a life humbling experience. And I feel like what I went through last year was very humbling for me. So all of that is good. Maybe it kickstarts something. Who knows? But, that's a guy who always had my back. That's what he said about Todd Bowles. So if he said that, then I really agree because he knows best. He was a father figure to me still to this day and checks in on me. Todd Bowles did everything possible to get Devin White to where he was supposed to be as a prospect. Maybe it's a wake-up call, but again, hope it's not a strategy, as he said, Xander.
Yeah. So let's move on, Johnny Mac. Before I do the defensive stat projections, obviously it won't be as deep as the offense. A little bit different the way stats work on defense, as we know, especially with guys like Jordan Davis. But What do you make of the ESPN ranking of having us at 10 on the overall roster? You're an objective person, an objective reporter of this team. You don't wear eagle colored glasses like I happen to sometimes. How would you rank this starting 22 coming into it? Because we talked about the depth being a problem, but dang, our
Uh,
starting 22 is pretty good. But how do you see it?
well, I think it's the opposite. I think, if you look at starting 22, I'm probably gonna put the Eagles higher than if I'm looking at the whole roster.
Definitely,
There
yeah,
I think there's some pretty significant depth issues. I don't think they're I've already said that. I think they're on the cusp of top 5. Um, I don't think it's a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination. I think in the NFC, right off the bat, Detroit and San Francisco are probably ahead of them. Um, so I think there's a lot. I think maybe the national people are catching up to some of the flaws. Um, we just talked extensively about one of them.
yeah,
They arguably the worst linebacker situation in the league. Um, they're going to be relying on a lot of young players. And Darius Slay was on Chris Long's podcast talking about what went wrong with the communication. I've been talking about it since we started this show.
yeah.
When Vic Fangio's defense fails, it's because of communication on the back end. Bill Colarulo was talking about it's either feast or famine. It's famine when there's no communication on the back end. That's when the famine comes. Now you're expecting young guys, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, might be Isaiah Rodgers who just got here, might be Kaylee Ringo, still very young. Whatever. You're expecting young guys to have no hiccups in one of the more complicated defenses from a coverage standpoint. Um, the continuity part of the offense is real. You've already heard the quarterback talk about it. It seems like he's getting a little sick of it. I don't know if he's on board. I think it's all been hyper focused on, oh, Jalen's upset at Nick Sirianni. Jalen doesn't like Nick Sirianni. Jalen didn't like that offense. I think it's maybe Jalen liked that offense and he's pissed that he's got to change from that offense. That's what I think. So to me, the biggest story of the year is going to be how Jalen Hurts meshes with Kellen Moore. If it's good, it's going to be great. But if it's bad, maybe it's going to be worse than anybody expected. Um, you know,
Biggest stories, Kellen and Jalen. Would your second biggest thing be the communication there on defense and how that works? Because it really could determine how good Vic's able to make this defense.
well, it's always a big deal. Like I said, I mean, if you go back to as good as they were in 2022, people don't think they were good because they flubbed communication in the Super Bowl. I mean, you could be good, number 1 in the NFL in pass defense, good. Then bang, blown coverage, you lose the Super Bowl.
Right.
It's just part of this defense, you know. It's, part of being that complicated. Um, so yeah, it's always a big thing with this defense. And young players tend to have more problems than veteran players who've done it a lot. So, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't have hiccups and get better and better as the season goes on. I think that's what you should be hoping for. You're going to have some hiccups early. And then hopefully you get better and better and second half of the season comes and it's the opposite of last year when you played your best football early. Maybe you're playing your best football late when it matters.
Yep, agree, Johnny Mac. Let's get into the things that we think for each defensive player. Let's just start with that front. Let's start with the two that everybody's got the onus on that could potentially make or break this defense this year to some extent. We'll start with Jalen Carter, second-year player out of Georgia. Obviously had a big rookie year, fell off a little bit toward the end when Patricia came in, but by all means, he was on his way to being the defensive rookie of the year. after the drop-off, he lost out to Will Anderson on the Texans. What do you make of Jalen Carter coming into the year, and what type of stats and numbers you think he can put up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Jalen Carter guy. He's going to be in the conversation to be the most talented Eagle. And he might be the most talented Eagle, pure football player. Can he translate that into being the best pure Eagles football player? I think he can. I think he should have been the defensive rookie of the year last year, even with the drop off late. I still think his overall standard of play was better than Will Anderson's. But
I think it
that's
was
just the
one of
way.
those things where it's like, what have you done for me lately? And
Yeah,
everybody just
that's
forgot how
just
good
the
he
way
was.
it is.
Yeah.
There's always a recency bias. But you talk about, I mean, this guy was it's a big PFF day. Rookie player, the only defensive tackles rated above Jalen Carter in the NFL last season were Dexter Lawrence, the Giants' best player, not Saquon
Who's a
Barkley.
tremendous tackle.
Yeah. Aaron Donald, Quinnen Williams from the Jets, who's phenomenal.
Yep.
Eric Brown from Carolina, who you might not know, but he's phenomenal. And Chris Jones, who everybody knows,
Yep.
in Kansas City. That's it. And then there's Jalen Carter. That's how good he was as a rookie. And he's got to play more. Conditioning issues, Georgia, we talk about it all the time. He's got to he played 599 snaps. He's got to get that up into the 700-800 range. And if you want to get to the Chris Jones category, 947, you want him on the field as much as possible.
Is that how many snaps Chris Jones played last year? That is unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's where Fletcher used to be, and that's where you want, maybe not that quite that high, but you want him up in that 700-800 range easily, and even more if he can do it. But Chris Jones is number one. That's tough, but there's a bunch of guys. Aaron Donald played 916. He's obviously Williams played 778. So you're more in that category. 778. Can he get to 778? That's going to be a big story with Jalen Carter. But as far as his skill, his talent, it's off the charts. He might be one of those guys where other teams are saying, well, we can't block him. So, in the case of an interior player, sometimes you use that against him. Sometimes you let him go up the field, try to trap behind him, things like that. But yeah, opposing teams are going to game plan to stop Jalen Carter. He's the guy that they're going to game plan for.
Let's talk stats. Johnny Mack last year, he had 6 sacks. You think he's a 10-sack type of player? I know it's tough because this is different to me doing stats for defensive guys. Like they impact the games in different ways that don't always show up on the score sheet. But just for the sake of the exercise, what kind of stats do you think Jalen Carter will put up this year? I will read you his stat line from last year. He had 23 or 33 total tackles, 20 solo, 13 assisted, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. What do you think Jalen Carter will put up this year?
I wish you had his pressure percentage.
Yeah, I don't have that on my PFF.
Maybe I can look that up, but yeah, I think he's going to be a double-digit sack guy at some point. So I, wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, that's one of those. Anybody who's watched this show, I give a shit about sacks because so many are based on other things. But the great ones like Aaron Donald are going to be there consistently because they get so much pressure. But he's going to be really good. Tackles are meaningless
at that position for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he's just really good. And I hate to say it, I know people like stats, but it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, especially at this point.
If his pressure percentage is 20% or more, that's what you want. That's what you want.
Yeah, let's go Jordan Davis now, Johnny Mack. Somebody who's coming into his third year, a misunderstood player by a lot of people, as we've talked about here on Birds 365. What's your expectations for Jordan Davis coming into the year? Last year, I thought he had a better year. Just to give you the stat line, I know as we mentioned, he's definitely one where the stats don't tell the full story. 45 total tackles, 18 solo, 2.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. I don't know if everybody's going to understand that because he is not the type of player that puts up stats, really. He's an impact player on the game, but it's tough to quantify in numbers. What do you expect? What do you expect for Jordan Davis this year coming into this season?
Yeah, I think that it's I don't want to be pigeonholed to numbers because they don't matter.
Yeah, well, don't forget the numbers
defense.
then. Just your expectation on the type of impact.
I mean, I've been talking about Jordan Davis for years, and people were going to be from the day he got drafted. I said, if people are expecting sacks, they're going to be disappointed. That's not his job. That's not his role. His role is to tie up blockers and make it easier for others to make plays or make it easier for others to get to the quarterback. Whether it's keeping in the running game, keeping guys off the off-ball linebackers where the Eagles have a weakness. So obviously he's going to be very important to that. Or in the pass rush, again, tying up two guys maybe so Jalen Carter has a one-on-one, which teams never want because they're going to be sliding protection to Jalen Carter. So, I mean, Jordan Davis is one of the most underrated players in football because people think he's bad. Now, there are issues. He needs to get better. Conditioning, as we said, it would be nice if he could develop to play more in 4-man fronts instead of just being a 50 front guy. And get more.
I think he's going to, honestly. And when you talk about that, just from his raw athleticism, like he's crazy fast for his size, and he does kind of have some of those things that the more he plays, I think he'll become more of an impact in the 4-man front. Maybe not, but I'm just projecting that I think he will eventually.
Well, they're going to try.
Yeah.
But, to me, if it's 3rd and 10, who do you want on the field? I don't want him on the field. I don't care. What do I care? I don't care if people think he's a failure. He's 26th of 127 in 2022. That's pretty good as a rookie. Last year was 30th of 130. Pretty good. Like, who gives a shit if people think he's good or he's bad if you're the Philadelphia Eagles? Is he helping you win games? He's already helping you win games. Can he get better? Yes. Can he play more? Yes. But if you're asking me, if it's 3rd and 13 and I want my NASCAR package on the field and I want my pass rushers on the field, he's not going to be on the field. But I don't see any problem with that. Others see a problem with that. But they're not thinking about winning football games. They're thinking about stats or fantasy football or whatever. I don't know what they're thinking about. But if you have Bryce Huff is supposed to be out there. Josh Sweat is supposed to be out there. Jalen Carter is supposed to be out. That's the 3 guys are supposed to be out there. And then who do you want that second interior player to be? You have Milton Williams. You can kick Brandon Graham inside. You can go about it a different way. Have a stand-up guy and take one of the edge guys. A lot of teams in the NFL do that now these days. Why do you want Jordan Davis on the field to make people feel better? Who gives a shit?
I don't give a shit because I know the player has the impact that he has, but JM points out in the chat, nobody cares more about what people think about their draft picks in the Eagles front office. In a way, it feels like he's correct about that. So I get it from that perspective. But I think Jordan Davis is a huge year. SMD Eagles brings up in the chat, the speed is real. Him running down Josh Allen, I'll never forget when that happened and Dan Sileo had somebody on from Buffalo. I forget who it was. It might have been who was it? Shoot, I'm forgetting. I'm blanking.
Yeah, a bunch of the Buffalo guys were shaking
They
their
were
head.
like
They were
the whole sideline was like, that guy is an absolute beast. I mean, just watching him run down 6'5" Josh Allen and just wreck him. I mean, all the way across the field. That's why I'm like, I know
there's
right
more
now.
to pass rushing than athleticism.
I know
If
that.
we're
I'm just saying, I think
if
he
we
could
were
develop
easy,
it.
I mean, the best pass rushers are they have tremendous technique, tremendous handwork. Um, they have tremendous pass rushing moves. They set people up. You know, there's a crap load of technique involved. Then he's more athletic than everybody else. And I think I used to have this discussion with Damo. Damo said he could play outside. I'm like, there's no sticking way this guy can play outside just because he
So
can
why
run.
do you say that? Is it because of some of the, the technique and the hand movement and some of that?
Yeah. I mean, but look at Hassan Reddick. Just put on a people got to see him over the past 2 years. Look at his handwork. Look at his
Yeah, well, I'm not
ability.
expecting him to be Hassan Reddick. Let's say just Javon Hargrave or
Well, why?
Jalen
What
Carter.
my point is, you have Bryce Huff, you have Josh Sweat, and even if you're not high on Nolan Smith, and you still have Brandon Graham, who's been doing it for a long time, and even Jalix Hunt, and anybody else you want to throw into the mix, whether it's Julian Okwara, who is a good pass rusher in college, or Terrell Lewis, who's amazingly still here, who is a good pass rusher in college. Um, These guys have been doing it for years and years and years and years. Why would you want Jordan Davis playing outside? You're worse. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Get
I don't want him
better.
playing outside. I was just thinking more of a D tackle in the 4-man front that can
Well, and
potentially
then it
create pressure.
becomes look, if it's 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6, and you got to guard against both aspects of the offensive game, they could run it maybe, probably not, but still. Versus 3rd and 13, I'm saying 3rd and 13, you want your best pass rushers on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. 3rd and 13 for sure.
He's not, and I don't have a problem with him not being on the field 3rd 13. Some people do. And by the way, to the commenter, if the Eagles are worried about stuff like that, shame on the Eagles. I don't believe they are. I think they know Jordan's a very good player. I think they're happy with Jordan. I think the one thing they want is the one thing everybody wants, and that's for him to have better conditioning to play more, because they want him to play more, and they want him on the field more because he's a good player, and he needs that. Part's a legitimate criticism. The fact that he's not going to be on the field on 3rd and long, I don't think they give a rat's ass about that, nor should they. And if they
I hope
do,
not,
there's
but I think
something
they have
wrong with them.
shown. I hope you're right, but to be honest, part of me doesn't think that you are right. I think they do care, maybe more than they should care, and I know because they care about what we say on our YouTube channel. They care about all sorts of stuff, and I get it. That's the PR department's job, but I think that people care. So take it for what you will. Maybe it's not as much as we're making it out to be, but I do think they care. Let's move on. Johnny Mac, defensive end, the new guy, Bryce Huff. What's your expectation for him coming into the year? I think he could have a breakout season playing with great defensive line here. I know he had a good one in New York, but he didn't really have a chance to be that full-time guy. He's going to get that chance here in Philadelphia. What do you think Bryce Huff does in this defense?
Yeah, I'm a big Bryce Huff guy. So for those people that think I'm always negative, get ready, because I think they hit a home run with Bryce Huff, and it's all projection. He played on a very good team. That's part of it. He was a one-trick pony, played 480 snaps. There's a big difference. Now he's going to be asked to play over 800. He's going to be asked to set the edge and run defense at times, which has not been a strength because he was never asked to do it. He's going to be asked to drop as a hook and a flat defender in Vic Fangio's scheme. He's never been asked to do it. So there's a lot of projection. But just as far as the pass rusher, last year I think people know he led the entire NFL according to next gen stats and pressure percentage. He also led the NFL in pressure percentage in 2022. He's done it for 2 consecutive years. Now, again, limited snaps. There's a big difference. But if he carries it, he was at 25% in 2022 generating pressure. These are absurd numbers. He was at 22% last year. If he can keep numbers over 20% with those additional snaps, he's going to be one of the best pass rushers in football. He's never going to be the greatest run defender. Guess what? Either was Hassan Reddick. Nobody's going to give a crap. You live with it. I think the Eagles got a really good player. I think this was the most Eagles-y move of the offseason, and I think they're going to get it right with Bryce Huff.
Numbers are great. It was a limited role, obviously, and he was playing on a really stacked defensive line. So we'll see how it does project here in Philly. But I do like Johnny Mac's optimism on Bryce Huff. I hope he's a great player. Is the pressure thing the thing you and Jody Mack used to debate about? Yeah. He wants sacks, doesn't care about pressures. I'm not going to go into it because Jody's not here to defend his stance. But
and by the way, Bryce got sacks too. So he got 10 sacks and 480 snaps.
Impact the game. I mean, pressures obviously impact the game, just as Jalen Hurts, just as any quarterback in the league who has to throw the ball when they have pressure in their face. Obviously.
But you have the best of both worlds for Bryce Huff. He had 10 sacks and 480 snaps. He had double digits and 480 snaps. So it's not like he wasn't getting sacks with the pressures.
Right.
What the pressures indicate is the consistency. Sometimes you might get pressure in a quarterback.
You don't get home, right?
Yeah. Sometimes the other guy doesn't do his job and you don't get home. So that's the point. And look, Chris Long often explains, show me the sack. As an edge rusher, Chris Long would say, yeah, sometimes I did it. Sometimes Fletcher collapsed the pocket. The guy ran right into me. I got a sack. Oh, whoop-de-doo. But Bryce Huff gets consistent pressure, and he's been a finisher as well, which I would always tell Jody, finishing is a trait because, Brandon Graham was in his younger days was a big pressure guy, but not the best finisher. He finished in the Super Bowl. That worked out.
I'll set the over-under for Bryce Huff at 14.5 sacks. Johnny Mac, you going over or under?
Over.
Wow, that would be
and again, I'm assuming health, obviously. With
all these.
But I said 15 when I was talking about him recently. That's what I expect. So that was a good number, good placement.
15 plus sacks from Bryce Huff would be tremendous. I want to skip. We only have 6 minutes left to play here, so I'm going to skip Josh Sweat. Sorry, Josh, I love you, but there's just a guy I want to talk to Johnny Mac about. We'll get to Josh if we have time. Nolan Smith, Johnny Mac, coming in now, second year, going to be a second-year player. He was a first-round draft pick, obviously. Got a little overshadowed because they took Jalen Carter at 9 overall, and then he fell to the bottom of the first round. Eagles picked him with their second first-round pick. What's the projection for Nolan Smith coming into the year? Does he have an impact? Does he finally show that he does have at least something to give to the team? What do you think from Nolan Smith?
Yeah, I so much of it with Nolan will depend on health, and he had a shoulder procedure, and hopefully he's healthier. If he's healthy, he's going to be part of the rotation, probably the fourth part of man on the rotation. So it's obviously a work in progress. But when I talk about those NASCAR packages, if I could envision the Eagles using him as a stand-up rusher inside. So then you have Carter, Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat on the field at the same time. That's what I'm talking about. Vic will do stuff like that. And to get the most potential pass rushers on the field in obvious passing situations. Again, 3rd and 13. Not talking 3rd and 5. You're going to have a real defensive tackle on the field, but there's a lot of ways you can go. he's going to be part of the rotation. Um, you know, probably if he's healthy, 400 or 500 snaps. And if that's the case, that's where Bryce Huff was. I'm not expecting with the Jets, I'm not expecting 10 sacks like Bryce got, but if you're at 4 or 5, I think that's a good step forward for Nolan Smith to the point people will stop calling him a bust after one season, which is kind of ridiculous, especially when he's hurt. And by the way, he played through the injury too.
Well, also especially when we're celebrating a guy in Brandon Graham who started his career very slow. But that's part of the modern world, Johnny Mac. Even quarterbacks. I mean, it's like you got to perform. Bryce Huff or Bryce Young. I mean, I'm not a huge Bryce Young guy, but one year it's like, oh, he's a tremendous bust. I mean, that's just the nature of the modern world now, man. The expectations are high and they're quick and they're fast and furious, and you got to perform,
Yeah,
especially in
you
your
would think
first
people
round.
would learn from Brandon, but
Yeah.
yeah, they don't. I mean, yeah, it's what have you done for me? Do something right now. You're a first round pick. I get it, but it's not fair. I'm not going to say it's fair. Um,
Well, I do think there is an element of if you are a first round pick, the expectation is higher and you should know that. I'm not saying it's right, but it's inevitable and it's the reality,
yeah, but
you
I
know.
think first round picks don't go in there and saying, "Oh, I'm a first round pick. I better show that I'm a first round pick." I mean, to
No,
them,
but you
they're
better
just
show you
trying
can
to.
play in the NFL or better at least show that you have the talent, in there. And I don't think Nolan showed that at all. I know it was marred by injury, but still.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, he wasn't healthy. He played through it. It's interesting. If he didn't play through it, he'd probably be in a better position, which is weird and counterintuitive as well. In other words, if he would have said, "You know what? I can't go. My shoulder, playing with this harness and, he had to sit for the season," people would be disappointed. They might call him injury prone, but they wouldn't have labeled him a bust. The fact that he played through it. He played in every game. Now, granted, he was playing on mainly special teams, um, but he fought through it. And in theory, that should be a feather in his cap, and it is with the organization. But I always bring up the Nate Gary story. People hated Nate Gary, and he wasn't a good player. I never say that, but the coaching staff loved Nate Gary, and I'm like, why does this coaching staff love Nate Gary? I tell this story all the time. Not very good, let's be honest, but typical. The Eagles had nothing at linebacker because they're drafting Nebraska safeties in the 5th round to be linebackers. Nate Gary. Um, They had nobody at linebacker. He played the whole season through a sports hernia, and Jim Schwartz and Ken Plajoel, who was the linebackers coach at the time, had tremendous respect for him because he did that, and he was their best option. Um, so they loved him for it. And there's always things like that maybe fans don't realize.
Johnny Mac, 4 to 5 is a little low for me. I'm going to set the over under for Nolan Smith at 5.5 sacks. You going over or under?
Well, I'm going under. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot for
I'm
a
hoping to
part-time.
get at least 6 out of him. I think he's going to have I think he's going to have a bigger role than people thinking. I think they're going to rotate Josh Sweat out a little bit more for him to try and get him on the field more. Maybe not, but that's what I think they're going to do because I don't know
Boy,
how much.
I'm amazed at the hits Josh Sweat has taken.
Oh, just from the business perspective, forget football for a second. I don't think they see Josh Sweat in their plans beyond this year.
Well, that's probably true as they rework the deal, but again, I think people need to separate a little bit from the business plan and the coaching staff. Like the coaching staff's going to play the guys that can help them win games.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I like about Vic Fangio. I think he's going to no matter what.
he is,
Yeah.
and Nick is as well. So
Well, as you pointed out, Nick's playing a different game. There is politics involved, and Nick is
Well, there is
showing.
politics, but he's never when the games start, he's not going to play people to acquiesce. Howie Roseman, he doesn't even report to Howie Roseman, as I said. He's going to try to win games at all costs. And yeah, I mean, Josh is just better than um, Nolan. I mean, Josh is a good player. He had a bad end of last season. You know, I think the Eagles were a little upset at the freelancing. I don't think. I know. You know, everybody was doing it. You know, he took some hits from that standpoint, but he's a good player. And he's still young enough to where, you know, I find it very hard to believe that Vic Fangio is going to show up and say, "Oh, we got to get Nolan Smith on the field and Josh Sweat off it." I could be wrong, but
Yeah,
that would need massive improvement from Nolan Smith.
we'll continue talking about each defensive player a little bit tomorrow. We're out of time here, but I will say just real quick on Josh Sweat. To me, I don't know why I feel like this. Maybe I'm wrong. I know you like the player. It just feels like he should be better than he is. I don't know what it is. Like he has this the perfect
He
prototype
looks like an
build.
edge rusher.
Yeah,
Yeah, I said
I mean,
first
he
time I
looks.
met him, I said,
Yeah,
"Oh, that's
yeah,
an
like
edge rusher."
I remember hearing you say that. Like if you built an edge rusher on a computer, like you would build Josh Sweat in terms of the size and the athleticism and the bend and all those things. And I just don't feel he's ever lived up to it. I hope he has a big year. He's
I
been
mean,
very inconsistent.
his story for people that don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, he
catastrophic
was
injury.
the number one, literally, going into college high school prospect in the country. And he had a horrible, almost lost his leg,
Yeah.
catastrophic leg injury. So when he was drafted, and really there was a lot of concerns about his leg, and the Eagles had him on a pitch count early. Was a 4th-round pick. You know, no injury. He's probably an All-American. He's probably a top 10 pick, and all that kind of stuff. Really, they only ditched the pitch count, so to speak, last year. That's the first time they did it because of his leg. And, you know, maybe he needs to play a little bit less. So that could factor into your Nolan Smith thing. But that to me is more of a medical thing than a performance thing. And he lived up to it in 2022. Um, he had 11 sacks. He was a big time player, and that's, you know, I'll look him up real quick. He was 12th of 119
Wow,
in
that's
the
high. Yeah,
entire
that's
league.
good, man.
He didn't play nearly to that level last year, but in 2021 he was 21 of 110. He's a
Yeah,
really good player.
maybe Vic can get it back out of him. I think that's a good point. It's good context there from Johnny Mack. Maybe I'm overreacting to my thoughts on Josh Sweat. Maybe he can have a big year for us because that would help. I mean, if we have him have a big year and Bryce Huff can be the player we're thinking he might be, especially based on what you said, Johnny Mack, that could be a good pass rush. And then maybe you're right about Nolan. He doesn't even need 6 sacks. You can go and get 4 or 5, show improvement, show the development. And you have time to wait in the wings a little bit and develop his body and get fully healthy. Could be good, but good stuff today, Johnny Mack. I thought Bill Colarulo was great. We had good linebacker talk. We had good defensive talk. Heavy defense today. We talked a little bit about the Cowboys' problems in the open. For any Eagle fan interested in that, you should go and check out that segment. Johnny Mack brought good context to the Cowboys' problem. But if you guys are in there, 65 likes right now, everybody. Let's get those likes up. I'd like to try and get to closer to 167 likes. So if you are watching, we appreciate all of you. Like the show on your way out. Johnny Mack, good show today, man. Just one more show left on the week. July 4th is on Thursday, so we'll have off Thursday and Friday this week. I hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Just one more show left this week, Johnny Mack.
Yeah, big Wednesday, final day of the week, holiday week. So everybody get excited. One more to go. Let's do it.
One more to go. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hit the like button on your way out. Appreciate all of you guys more than you know. Real quick before I check out, I want to thank James Carver again. I know he's still in here. I think he's still in here. If he's not, I'm sorry, but I mean, what a day yesterday from him. He gifted 120 JAKIB memberships on our YouTube channel. So James, thank you, brother. That is deserving of a JAKIB care package. And I spoke to the big man last night. I said, Krause, I don't think James Carver is in Philadelphia, but we got to send him to a game. I think he's close to Dallas. I'd like to send him to Eagles, Dallas, in Dallas next year. James Carver, that's my offer to you, friend. If you're out there and you're willing to accept and you're willing to go, and if you can't do that, shit, I'll send you to another game. But Eagles Dallas in Dallas in Jerry's world. That's what I want to do for James Carver, for all the support he's been giving the channel. We appreciate you so much, brother. I know you're saying no, but we are doing it. I'm going to get your address out of you, and I'm going to send you the care package. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See you, everybody. Thank you.